Did you want me to fill out next?
That's the end.
I'm at exhibit N.
On the first page, it has three charts down, projected community.
Yes?
Okay. Again, go to exhibit Q. The very first page of exhibit Q is projected community, model last updated August 19, 2021, correct?
Yes?
That's disappeared from the rest of the dashboards for September and October. Isn't that true?
I don't have them all in front of me here. I can look if you'd like me to, but I can take your word for it. If it's not there, it's not there.
It's not there for all of September. It's not there for October.
Okay?
Where did that go?
Like I said before, I'm not the one who populates the dashboards. I look at the information I'm given. It's reasonable to assume that people were waiting for more data to update it.
Doctor, when you testified in your direct examination, again, if you go back to exhibit N, you testified about what was so important about projected community. You testified that you were hoping to see that number reach a certain percentage to determine whether or not the pandemic was over. Is that right?
Can you repeat what you were saying? I lost some of what you were saying.
All right. You recall testifying about projected community in your direct examination with the state's attorney?
I do.
And you remember testifying that this was an important metric for you, correct?
Yes?
Okay. And it was important because you wanted to see Rhode Island reach a certain immunity level.
Yes?
And you testified that some of that immunity is by the vaccine and some of it is natural.
Yes?
Okay. And in fact, the number above it has percentage of vaccinations.
Yes?
But the number above it doesn't have natural immunity.
That's right.
And you said there was a difference.
Yes?
Okay. Again, this was important for you.
It still is.
It still is. But the numbers don't exist anymore. You don't have those projections as of August 19th from the date of the emergency order.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say the numbers don't exist anymore. They just don't have to be populated in this dashboard. And I don't know why they weren't populated, but they just weren't. But I've seen other modeling data, many meetings ago too, that have projections.
Doctor, on your direct examination, beginning of this hearing, you were asked about pediatric deaths because of COVID. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And your testimony on that first day of hearing was that there were 3 pediatric COVID deaths. Sorry. Your testimony on the first day of hearing was that there were 3 pediatric deaths in Rhode Island because of COVID. Do you recall that testimony?
Objection, that's an inaccurate summary. The doctor clarified that it was based upon CDC standard for the death.
You changed it. I'm asking you the first day you testified, you used the words because of COVID, right?
I don't remember saying because of. I thought it was, my position's always been they're associated with or attributed to, they meet the CDC definition.
So the CDC's definition could include deaths not because of COVID.
The CDC's definition has been the same throughout the pandemic. It's any death with a positive COVID test. We've been using the same definition the whole pandemic.
Any death with a positive COVID test.
Any death with a positive COVID test, yes.
So a 16-year-old who gets shot in the head, is rushed to the hospital, is tested positive for COVID, and then dies with a gunshot wound to the head. That's a COVID death?
It meets the definition of the CDC.
So I think in the state's brief, they indicate there's over 600 COVID deaths in this country so far. How many of those deaths were people who didn't die because of COVID?
I don't have that information.
Doesn't make you curious at all, doctor?
You know, we're going by the CDC's definition, of course, I'm curious. You know, but from what I can base on other information I see, number of people being admitted to hospitals, number of people in ICUs, number of missed Cs. It's my opinion that COVID is a major public health threat to the people of this country and this state.
But it's also your testimony that that number, 600,000 deaths or more, is unverifiable because it could include thousands of deaths not caused because of COVID.
So you're speculating. I believe the current number is over 700,000 people who have died that are attributed to COVID. As long as we're using the same consistent process, it's fair to do that. And I think at this point in the pandemic, it doesn't make sense to change definitions now.
Now, you just used another word, attributed to. Is attributed to because of, or is attributed to you just happen to have a positive test, but you died of something else?
Like I said, we're using the same definition the Center for Disease Control and Prevention uses.
Does the Center for Disease Control use the phrase attributed to?
No, they don't.
Okay, so when you use that, you misspoke just now.
Yes, I did.
Again, I'm trying to be very precise with our language here, doctor.
Yes, I understand.
Okay? You can die with COVID or because of COVID.
That's right.
Okay? And it's your testimony that a COVID death will be recorded even if you die with COVID but because of something else.
Yes.
And in fact, the 3 children who died in Rhode Island did not die because of COVID deaths. Right?
They died with COVID.
Right. In fact, your spokesman, is it Joseph Wendelkin? Is he the spokesman for the Department of Health?
Yes, he's a public information officer.
In fact, he, on numerous occasions, has had to correct the public perception out there that these 3 deaths were because of COVID, right?
I've done the same thing myself.
Right. In fact, Mr. Wendelkin sent an email to a radio personality by the name of Matt Allen back in May saying, we have had 3 COVID-19 associated pediatric deaths in Rhode Island. In one instance, the child had a very significant underlying medical issue. The child was COVID-19 positive, but it is not believed that COVID-19 contributed to the child's passing. Would you agree with that statement?
Yes.
The second fatality was similar in a child who was COVID-19 positive, but it was not believed that COVID-19 played a role in that child's passing either. You agree with that statement?
Yes.
In the third instance, the cause of death was considered undetermined. You agree with that statement?
Yes.
So you wouldn't want to try to be misleading this court or the public that 3 children in Rhode Island died because of COVID.
I don't want to mislead the court ever.
So if in the transcript it says you use the words because of, that was just a grave mistake on your part, right?
I've already admitted if I said that, I misspoke.
And in fact, in the state's memo, it goes on to emphasize that children will die because of the Delta variant. Are you familiar with that?
Objection, Your Honor. The memo was written, it's argumentative, it's done by the state's attorneys, it's not done by Dr. Mandel.
Well, I'm assuming he informs them. Doctor, if someone were to say that children will die in Rhode Island because of the Delta variant, would you want to put them at ease and say that is not going to happen?
I don't know what the future is in that regard. You know, quite frankly, I'm very thankful we haven't had a pediatric death from COVID. I think that has a lot to do with our public health response and our mitigation measures. Quite frankly, I think it's things like that that are keeping the children safe in the state.
Well, children weren't wearing masks through the whole summer and they didn't die, right?
Prevalence during the summer was very low, and some children did wear masks, but there was not a mandate over the summer.
Can I have the witness be shown as 15, please?
Counselor, did you say 15?
15, yes, 1 5. You have to please it?
And this really needs,
No.
I've got your exhibit, yes.
This is a chart that was prepared by Dr. Foster, comparing COVID deaths, pediatric cases to flu deaths over the last 10 years or so, correct?
Yes, it's your doctor's exhibit.
You don't have any reason to doubt the numbers that are in it, do you, Doctor?
No?
Okay. According to this chart, during the H1N1 flu in 2009-2010, almost 1,300 deaths, pediatric deaths were reported, correct?
Yes, it says 1,282. And I assume this is referring to the entire United States.
Correct. Some of the other seasonal flus, 2012 to 2013, 1,161 deaths.
Yes.
And on down the line there. In fact, the seasonal flu is exponentially much more deadly to children than COVID-19, isn't that right?
I don't draw that conclusion.
You don't draw that conclusion? So
No.
1,282 deaths in 1 year from the flu is similar to 198 deaths in 2000?
So it's very different responses. We have mitigation measures for the pandemic. We did not have these mitigation measures in place for the flu. It's really impossible to make comparisons. Flu vaccine isn't nearly as effective as COVID vaccine. People weren't wearing masks during the flu. They are wearing masks now. We didn't shut down the economy ever for the flu. And this is why I think these type of comparisons are just fallacious.
Okay. So would it be your opinion then, because the flu is so deadly for children, that children should be wearing masks for the rest of their lives while they're in school?
We haven't made that evaluation. In Rhode Island, we haven't had flu deaths. Last year, there were no deaths in the entire state. That's something to learn from. I haven't seen a pediatric death in a long time from the flu. So I haven't done the study and evaluation. What I'm saying though is, when you draw comparisons from flu to COVID, it's really impossible to make those comparisons because one mitigation measure, like masks in and of itself, is one mitigation measure. But the whole country went through a great big response. The planet did as well. So it's really impossible, in my opinion, to compare flu to COVID.
Doctor, I don't know about other people, what they're hearing, but it certainly sounds to me like masks are never going to go away for kids because if it's this deadly, if the flu is this deadly, it's your opinion, kids should be wearing masks so they don't get the flu.
Objection to characterization.
Okay, with that, why don't we take a break? If I could ask you all to be back in about 5 minutes or two, we'll try to keep going. Thank you.
Stephen Lamar.
We each approach, I had a conflict of course.
We're off the record.
Thank you.
We approach? Yes.
I'm sorry. I wouldn't have said that.
We're going to go to 1 o'clock.
Thanks.
Unless the staff revolts on me. Take a look. Thank you. Thank you, Doctor.
All right, let's see if I can get this. This mark next.
Next is exhibit 46, for identification.
Doc, this is something which I attached actually to the complaint. It's RISE guidance for a healthy and safe opening of 2021-22 school year, correct?
Yes.
This was prepared in conjunction with the Rhode Island Department of Education, the Rhode Island Department of Health, and the government, correct?
Yes.
So you're aware of this stuff?
Yes.
Okay, I'm moving to the full exhibit.
With Without objection, 46 is pulled.
No objection, thank you.
And then if you go to the third page, it has recommendations with regard to wearing masks, correct?
Yes?
And as of the date of this document, which I believe was June 29th, is that correct?
Yes?
Masks are not going to be mandated in schools, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, you said after that, in July, suddenly the Delta variant appeared and things changed, right?
Yeah, the Delta variant started around July 4th in Rhode Island.
Doctor, I'm going to ask you, you're familiar with school health regulations?
Yes?
And you're familiar with how those regulations are enacted?
Yes?
There's a normal procedure for enacting regulations such as those.
Yes, there is.
And in that normal procedure, well, let me ask you this. Can you describe what the normal procedure is, not the emergency procedure, but the normal
Sure.
procedure for enacting a health regulation is?
Yes, I'd be happy to.
Okay, what's the process?
So it starts with an idea. Anybody can have an idea and notify the department to have an idea. We're open to everyone's ideas. And then if it's an idea that's worthy of consideration for a regulation, people in the department start drafting regulation because you have to have something to react to. So a regulation is drafted and then it's presented often for what's called advance notice of rulemaking. So when we do advance notice of rulemaking, I was in a meeting with this yesterday, for example. A community review can occur. We often keep them open for like 3 weeks. We'll get written responses from people. But a lot of times we have an in-person, or as the case was yesterday, a Zoom, community review where everybody can just chat. We can dialogue with each other. And that can happen more than once. We can do it as many times as we want. We usually do it once and do it at all. And then we get ready to go to the Office of Regulatory Reform. So Office of Regulatory Reform looks at what we have with our new regulation. We often have to do a cost-benefit analysis. So we do the cost-benefit analysis. Office of Regulatory Reform looks at the regulation and says, gee, does it conflict with other regulations in the state? Or does it conflict with any statute? Did the cost-benefit analysis make sense? And then we will go out for public comment. When we go out for public comment, we may have a public hearing, but we don't always. With public comment, it'll be a period of time, it's usually around 30 days, where we get people in the public to kind of tell us what their thoughts are. And sometimes after public comment, we actually change our regulation. It comes from the logical outflow of public comment.
Doctor, if I can interrupt you there for a minute.
Sure.
Under the statute, isn't it true you have to have a public comment if more than 25 people, or a government agency or an association having not less than 25 members ask for it?
Yes, it is true.
So let's use,
But we almost always do it anyways.
okay, let's use that analysis with the school health regulation. Now,
Sure.
there are special rules for school health regulations, right? The Department of Education is involved as well as the Department of Health.
Yes, we work with them as well.
And in these school health regulations, you consult with the Department of Ed in drafting.
Yes, we do.
Do you know the last time Rhode Island school health regulations were amended?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Have you been involved at all in a review of these school health regulations in Rhode Island?
Yes.
When was that?
Before the pandemic, we were involved, I was involved in particular, because we were proposing regulations to allow the use of some students who needed medical marijuana to use medical marijuana in schools. So that occurred, I want to say 2018, maybe 2019, but I was involved with some meetings at that point as well.
But that never was enacted.
Yeah, this is a good example of we got a lot of public comment and it was decided that, it really just wasn't a good idea. So that was a good example. We got some input from a stakeholder. We took their idea. We went through the process, and when it all was said and done, we decided this really isn't a good idea. So we decided not to do it.
I told you, Doctor, the last time that the school health regulations were amended was actually January of 2009. Does that surprise you?
Yeah, that would surprise me.
For some reason, I only have 2 copies of school health regulations. They are attached to the complaint. But I'll ask that this be marked.
Plaintiff 47.
verification.
No objection, I assume?
I don't have the document from here, I just wanted to look at it, please. Your Honor, just here just for one reason, the parking hall regulations were actually updated in 2018. This is a 2009 copy.
Well, I got that from the Department of Education website. Actually, no, from the Department of Health website. So if there's a more updated version, that would surprise me. It's not on the website.
I admittedly haven't gone to the website recently, and looking through this document, so if what would give me an opportunity to go and check, because my understanding is updated in 2018, not 2012. It was updated in 2009, but a newer version hasn't done since then.
I have no idea why he's using it, Lisa. Maybe using an older one or something.
It wasn't my intention, Your Honor, to use an old one, but why don't I ask this question?
Another good reason to have lunch.
If Your Honor wants to take a break.
Okay. We need to take a longer break, so we'd ask people to be back at 2:30. We're going to try and get going as soon as we can after that.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
All rise.